Welcome to the Dynasty Pros Devy Show. Alongside JC Romero and special guest Noah Green, I'm Tommy Harvey. Tonight we'll dive into looking at Devy relevant players by conference. First up is the SEC East, plus some Devy news coming up right now. What's going on, fellas?
The Mutts, man. Love that new intro. But yeah, man, ready to talk some Devy news.
What's up, guys?
Yeah, I decided to go with the new intro the other day just because apparently Bob said the other one makes you want to have an epileptic seizure. So went ahead and changed that up a little bit. Before we get started tonight, guys, everybody watching, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you'd like to know when we go live, make sure you also hit that notification bell. As always, we will start off with a little bit of Devy news. Not a whole lot over the last couple weeks since we've talked to you last, but we'll go through a couple things here. First thing, Zachary Franklin, wide receiver transfer from UTSA, has committed to go to Ole Miss. I think he immediately jumps to become Ole Miss's wide receiver one in that room. Him and Trey Harris should be a pretty good combo there. No matter who's throwing in the ball, but it's probably going to be Jackson Dart to start off with at least.
Agreed. Always like when you see those smaller guys, not smaller guys, but like the guys from smaller schools jump into the big leagues in a sense, in the college realm. Because it really shows what they're about. They nominal in those smaller schools. Now it's like, all right, let's see if put you to the test. This could rise his draft stock hell of a lot. Going to the SEC and making himself a name.
I'd like to see how his skill set transfers to the SEC.
Right.
Yeah, he's been so dominant. His production is so off the charts. And Ole Miss is a great place to go pro. Mingo just went, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Elijah Moore. Huge trajectory. So be interesting if he can do that.
Next bit of news, five-star wide receiver, 2024 class, Bryant Wesco, has committed to Clemson. That's a pretty big deal. Obviously, five-star guy going to Clemson, going to go play with Cade Klubnik, at least for a year before Klubnik heads off to the NFL.
That'd be nice too. I mean, getting some more weapons for Klubnik. He's a quarterback that we talked about a couple times in our Devy rankings and stuff like that, Devy shows. And if you have a quarterback like that, you want to get him some weapons. So adding that guy in there is definitely another weapon for his arsenal, and could help him elevate his draft stock as well, just by making him look good. So
absolutely. Clemson has plenty of weapons around Klubnik now. If you look at the guys that they have right now with Williams and Randall and Collins and Shipley, obviously there. Maffa is a good running back, and Brenningstool. They have the potential under their new OC to really put up some big time points.
Yep.
All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into our SEC East Devy guys here. We're going to start off with the obvious one. We're going to go with Georgia. They're the most loaded team out there. Let's go and start off with them. Their quarterback room, Carson Beck, Brock Vandegrift, Gunnar Stockton, they're all five-star quarterbacks coming in. Succeeding Stetson Bennett here. Bennett was he was a good quarterback, a good college quarterback. Was really made a name for himself. Basically, being a walk on and then going JUCO and then coming back to Georgia. But these three guys are totally different. Have much bigger arms. I think the first guy up right now is going to be Carson Beck. I see him more in the mold of a prototypical NFL quarterback. He's not going to run around a whole lot, but which actually may kind of be beneficial for Georgia because they've kind of loaded up on weapons around him now too.
Agreed. I like Gunnar Stockton. I think it is Carson Beck's job to take. But Stockton, I liked him coming out of high school. He can throw the dimes. He has a nice cannon arm, but he can also escape. He's about 6'1", just 220. Someone you just like, and I think he's someone that can elevate the offense in a different sense, where he can just expand the play if need be. I don't think he's gonna take the job if Carson Beck is playing well, but I think he could definitely, be the starting quarterback if they need to, and not necessarily lose a beat either.
Sure.
Yeah, Beck's interesting. Like 6'4", 215, big pocket, traditional pocket QB. And I mean, he's getting buzz. So it'll be interesting to see. He's getting buzz. He's on some like early Heisman lists. He's getting buzz. So, because when you're surrounded by that kind of cast, we'll have to see what they can do. I mean, we're going to go to wide receivers, but like it is insane that Georgia was just like, we're just going to go take the best receiver from Mississippi State and from Missouri. Just bring him in.
Oh, yeah. Insane. Brock Vandegrift, another guy we didn't, we mentioned we haven't really gone over his credentials all that much, but he was another 5-star guy coming in. I don't want to say he's buried on the depth chart there, but I don't know if I see him playing a whole lot other than just being in a backup role there. What type of Devy potential do you see Vandegrift having?
I mean, it's one of those where I think, with the way Georgia's been running, just as Alabama has in recent years, if the quarterbacks go down, you grab him. I'm not necessarily targeting him during my drafts, but if you see Beck or Stockton go down, just be aware, because he's going to be a hot commodity, on that waiver wire. So he's definitely just someone to keep an eye on. Can he still win for them? I mean, it's one of those, he has the weapons, so it's kind of like it's hard to lose. But again, you're playing in the SEC, which is one of the best defensive conferences in the country. So, if someone is going to lose for them, it could possibly be him. But, keep an eye on him. He could, raise some eyebrows or, show something that we haven't seen yet, just being in that offense for Georgia. I mean, when you have the running backs that Georgia has, you don't necessarily need to do much if all you need to do is hand it off, So he could definitely be something, but I'm not targeting him necessarily in my drafts either.
I assume you're kind of talking about targeting him as far as like a waiver wire pickup in CFF or C2C formats.
Right, exactly.
Right. Yep, I got you. Running back is always for Georgia loaded. This year they're going to, we're looking at guys like Kendall Milton, Dajon Edwards, Branson Robinson, Andrew Paul, Roger Robinson II. All 5 of those guys are more than capable of dominating any defense that they come up against. It kind of seems as if it's going to be Kendall Milton's turn here. Last year it was more Kenny McIntosh and Edwards. I think this year it's going to be Milton and Edwards with a little bit of Branson Robinson sprinkled in. Andrew Paul's coming off that injury last year, and Roger Robinson is the freshman. Branson Robinson specifically is just a man back there. He's been a grown man since he was like 12 years old. So he's had pretty high praise for a long time. I think he is probably the best Devy running back of that group. Next, I'd probably go Roger Robinson. And actually, I'm a pretty big fan of Andrew Paul. Going back and looking at some of his film from high school, he was pretty dynamic there.
Agreed. I mean, Paul, me and Branson, man. Branson's my boy. I'm drafting him everywhere I can. If you're in the league with me, you better grab him early because I'm taking him. But Andrew Paul, man, this kid can glide. Like, every time I watch his highlight tapes, it's just like, what is he even like on the ground? It just seems like he's just levitating on, with his cuts and everything like that. He's so smooth. He has some breakaway speed, so it'll be exciting to see him. But then you bring in Roger Robinson as well, and that's what I'm saying, man. Georgia just stacks up on these running backs. And yeah, it's Kendall Milton's turn, but guess what? When it's Branson's turn, the world's going to go crazy. I mean, it's one of those where they know how to cycle the running backs strategically where you just need 1 year as their starting back and you're gonna go pro. I mean, it's just not gonna. It doesn't matter. You can have one efficient year there, and you're gonna go pro just on how well the offense runs like it and how well they make you just look in that 1 year alone.
Well, here's the thing: in a Devy league, you don't really care how much run that these guys get, just as long as they get draft capital, right? So Branson Robinson, even if he doesn't get a whole lot of carries until his junior year, so what? That's less tread on the that's less tread off the tires there, less wear and tear on his body, and he's more NFL ready.
You go back to last year's draft with Dameon Pierce. A lot of people were like, "Oh, we didn't see a lot of Dameon Pierce at Florida. He did get the rock," and it's like just what you said. I mean, you don't necessarily want all that tread on the tires for these type of running backs, But once they go pro, I mean, they're just heavy hitters, and there's some grown men back there. So, yeah, I'm a fan of Branson for sure.
Oh yeah,
I mean, Roderick's 245 pounds or something like that. Also.
Yeah, they're both beasts.
Like, he's a grown ass man also, and it's just it's going to be interesting to see. And I agree, Milton, I think will probably get the run. I think they do probably sprinkle 3 backs throughout the year. Dajan Edwards, interestingly, Dajan Edwards was crazy efficient last year with his running. He was very, very effective and had a very high explosive run rate. So he'll be he'll definitely get run in there too. I don't know if he's I probably wouldn't be targeting him as high as the other guys in Devy drafts. He's going to be lower because he's smaller. But
he's more of a CFF C2C guy.
He's more of a CFF C2C guy because he might actually get some numbers, but probably he's going to have less of an NFL future, less of an NFL body and profile.
Right.
Agreed.
As far as the running game, what do you think the impact of Mike Bobo coming in? Do you think it affects them? It has a greater effect on them or a lesser effect on them with the way he calls plays?
I don't think they're necessarily going to change that much. I mean, he's still going to be he knows what he has, right? He's been around the block. He knows what he has in his running game. So I think he'll know how to utilize them right. And they still have a good offensive line where you're not going to need to change up a lot for them. You might go different with the way the quarterbacks are, as y'all mentioned, with Beck, more of that pocket presence, a little bit bigger, or not a little bit. He is quite bigger than what Stetson was. So you might have more of a cannon and go, pass first in a sense, but still, when you have running backs like this, 5 guys that can take the rock, I mean, you're not going to change much. You're still going to have an efficient running game. You're still going to have guys that break off huge runs, or even guys that just, pound in. You have 100 carries from 3 or 4 different ones, just because that's how much they will possibly run. So I don't think it's going to be drastically a huge change that you're going to want to stay away from them. But, it is something to keep an eye on.
Sure. All right, let's go ahead and move into their wide receivers. It's like we mentioned earlier, they brought in Dominic Levitt from Missouri, Ra Thomas out of Mississippi State, and then still got Ladd McConkey coming back. Seems like he's been there for about 8 years now. Denalon Morissette, Tyler Williams, and Yazid Haynes. Williams and Haynes are the 2 freshmen coming in. I think they have pretty high potential. What do you guys see from their wide receiver room?
Who do you like, Noah?
I mean, Lovett's really interesting. He was unbelievable at Missouri last year. I mean,
with bad quarterback play.
With bad quarterback play, I saw he had PFF's highest grade against man coverage at 94.1 last year at Missouri. And if you look at his experienced adjusted ratings, like his dominator rating, his yards per pass attempt rating, which are all really good indicators for NFL, he's absolutely above the curve from the last 2 years, actually, with growth from his freshman and sophomore year at Mizzou. I think he's very interesting there. It's going to be interesting to see how he fits in, but I think he will emerge as the one there. if we're going to see one. And I think he has I think he's got NFL potential, especially if he keeps taking it up from what he's been doing, which he has been growing each year. So it'll be interesting to see how the transfer hits. Sometimes these guys do transfer and you get a profile where you see growth from a freshman to sophomore year, and then all of a sudden you'll see a dip junior year, maybe based on a new program, et cetera. It'll be really interesting to see, but I think he's got a shot to be the one and really like stand out and take a leap.
I like that. I like Ra Thomas. You know, when I'm looking at him, I'm honestly, if we're talking about recent pros, kind of like a George Pickens. You know, he's aggressive at the line of scrimmage, but he can burst off and make the play. And I think where he kind of gets the quarterback favoritism is because his abilities to get that separation, or even just his strong hands, you know, to be able to go up there and make the catch. He has the right fundamentals in front of him. He knows what to do at the line of scrimmage, whether he needs to press the cornerback or even just, you know, make a cut play and go deep. So I think that could possibly play in his favor to become a favorite target for him. NFL wise, I mean, it's one of those where we're just gonna have to see if that translates well, right? It always is different when you see those transfers coming from another school to a bigger school like Georgia, because now you think of it as like prime time. When the guys go to Alabama, it's like this isn't going to be your other school you are. These are national championship teams that everyone is out to get you. Everyone you're playing knows you have the potential to go get that national championship, and guess what? They want to beat you. So they're going to beat you up, you know, physically, try to drain you and everything like that. So with that, these wide receivers, it's going to be interesting to see just the mentality they go in, you know, with these guys. But Ra someone I like. I like to compare him to George Pickens right now. Has some quick speed and someone that could be aggressive at the catch and even after the catch.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Now here we go. The main event for Georgia right here. Their tight end room. Absolutely ridiculous. The tight ends that these guys bring in. It's crazy. Obviously, everybody knows who Brock Bowers is. But then you got right behind him Oscar Delp, and then those two incoming freshmen, Pierce Sperlin and Lucky Lawson. Both of them have big time potential as well. What are you guys seeing out of those four?
We talk about the running back room, man. Their tight ends is just as crucial. If you're not grabbing these running backs, hopefully you grab these tight ends. I mean, they're just. I'm personally waiting for Oscar Delp's opportunity, you know, which means Brock Bowers needs to go pro, because Delp is a beast, you know. So, and it's not a knock on Bowers or Sperling. It's just, you know, it's kind of the same thing where they're just cycling these guys out, and it's like, look, it's not your year. Don't worry, you're gonna get your time to shine, you know. So this year, Brock Bowers is gonna jump up boards. I mean, he went 105 in our Devy draft, if not earlier, you know. So he's someone you're putting him at the top of those guys with the wide receivers groups. You know, we haven't talked about something like this since we seen Kyle Pitts, right? And Brock Bowers is just a monster, and he's going to dominate everybody. And he's probably going to be the best receiving option they have, you know. But that's great just in what he can do. And yeah, their tight end room is crazy. And if you grab any of them, you're going to be lucky, because I can see all of them going pro.
Sure.
Where are we so from the Georgia team, where are you drafting these? Which of these guys are you drafting in like a 4-round Devy draft, 12 team? Which guys are going off the board in that kind of draft for y'all?
In a 4-rounder, you're looking at Brock Bowers. You may get Oscar Delp kind of late in the fourth, possibly. Right now, they're mainly going undrafted just because a 4-round Devy draft is loaded. You have a ton of talent.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking 60 guys, but that 60 guys through 3 classes, you know, and they all have pretty high potential. They all have very high potential, especially all these freshmen coming in. You normally don't really see a whole lot of tight ends come off the board in a Devy draft. Just mainly your high end elite guys, like a Brock Bowers. He's going mid to late first round in pretty much every Devy draft.
I mean, I've seen him go as early as 103. From people who like him. I think Branson is going to go is going in the second round. Maybe slips to the third in a lot of these. Carson Beck is starting to sneak into like 4th and 5th rounds.
Yep.
Of some of these. Other than that, I think a lot of these guys are kind of some sleepers that can be picked up either later down the road, or if there's a longer draft, going into the 6th through 8th round, like I'd take a shot on a Dominic or a Rara there potentially.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, with all those, Carson Beck is the one that's the fringe one where it's like maybe if you have that last pick in the 4th and you need a quarterback, go after him. Brock Bowers is definite. Oscar Delp, I would like him in the 4th, but I mean, I think there's other tight ends around the college football nation that you can possibly get. But I mean, he's still great, and he's someone. Any of their tight ends, whether it's Pierce Berlin or Lucky Lawson, if you're not grabbing them now, they're on your radar to grab next season in the Devy draft, right? The wide receiver room. And if your Devy allows, waivers, some don't, some do. If they allow waiver pickups for your Devy team, it's just watch how the wide receiver room develops, and whichever one, skyrockets out the first week or a couple weeks, those are ones you might want to get. But I mean, I think the for sure ones here are probably Branson and Brock. Agreed.
Yeah,
2 dominant monsters there.
Definitely. Well, let's move past Georgia since everybody knows what Georgia kind of has. Let's move on to Florida. I see a whole lot of here. I don't know if anybody's a star Devy guy for Florida. We'll jump into a couple of these guys, but let's start off with their quarterback room. Graham Mertz and Jack Miller the third. Both these guys are transfers. Neither one of them are very good. They're really just names on the board right now. Mertz coming in from Wisconsin and Miller coming in from Ohio State. Miller coming in from a big time program, but I just don't think he's very good. Obviously, just a couple names to monitor there. We won't really dive a whole lot into them. Running back is really where their meat is here. Trevor Etienne, Montrell Johnson, and Trayon Webb. I think all 3 of them have pretty good Devy potential. The highest potential one there is going to be Etienne, in my opinion.
Agreed for sure. Yeah, agreed for sure. He's, Montrell, this is where if you're CFF C2C, Montrell had more carries and produced more points last year overall. It's possible he could do that again, depending on what the scheme looks like. But from an NFL perspective, Trevor Etienne is the prospect. His explosive run rate is much higher. He's just he's really his yards over expected are higher. He's a more efficient runner. He's really interesting in the pass game, and he's big. He actually had to trim down a little bit from how he came in and get leaner. But he can run some folks over in addition to being incredibly shifty. And
I kind of see Trayon Webb being a lot of the same there. Right now he's only about 205, but he has the potential to get up to 220, 225 really quick. He's not the most explosive guy, but he has enough juice to him to be able to run away, enough size to be able to run over people, and I think by his junior year he may be getting a little bit of love there.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of them. Etienne's interesting because he's not necessarily like if we're talking 4 rounds. I don't necessarily know if I'm taking him maybe in the 4th. I don't know if I'm taking him within the first 3, maybe in the 4th. And really with any of these running backs, but it's really just it's hard when you see quarterbacks you're not a fan of to get behind any of their weapons, right? Because I feel with all these guys, it's like we want to see if they're playmakers because the quarterbacks might not be as efficient. So we just want to see the balls in their hands and what they do after that catch or after they get that rock, right? So with all these guys, it'll be interesting to see. And I don't necessarily know if Etienne will be the lone goat where I would target in a Devy draft, but also I'm not necessarily mad if I'm missing on him because I think there's talent elsewhere as well. But I mean, out of the whole Florida Devy area that we're talking about with the offense, the running backs are the most intriguing to me. Trayon Webb specifically, coming out of high school, he's just a good runner, runs with balance, athletic, can bounce off the blockers. And then Montrell Johnson, as you were saying, he's fast, but he's also patient. I see a lot where he kind of waits for his blockers and see where he can get open and make the go-ahead run for the score. So all those running backs, I like them. Am I necessarily targeting them in my Devy drafts? It depends how deep it is. So.
Sure. Wide receiver now, their wide receiver room is interesting. They have they have a couple really good freshmen coming in, Aiden Mizell and Eugene Wilson III. They got a couple kind of ancillary guys. You know, you get Caleb Douglas, Marcus Burke, Andy Jean. I don't know how much potential those guys have, but those first two guys I mentioned, Mizell and Wilson, are definitely their most prized recruits that they have coming in this year.
Those guys have speed for days. Like Mizell, the word out of camp from Florida and from the spring game is that Mizell is just they're just saying the Florida guys are calling him fast. They're like he's just pops off the field. He didn't catch balls in the spring game, but part of that was that I think he was playing a lot with Miller. Miller went something like 5 for 15 in that game, going to your point of him not being good. And but he drew, I think, something like 3 pass interference coverages, and he's getting talk. He's been in there for a while. And Wilson is electric fast, super quick. Those guys have real potential if they can ever get a QB. I think it'll be interesting to see if they hit the year 0 threshold this year, depending on how much run they get. Honestly, with these just really ineffective QBs. Mertz had 50%, 57% completion percentage at Wisconsin. I mean, it's not going to be pretty. So it'll be interesting to see.
Well, here's the thing: you're not going to see a whole lot out of them this year, just because, like you said, there's no quarterback play. But next year, with Lagway coming in, whether they turn the keys over to Lagway immediately or go bring in another transfer quarterback. I think you're really going to see Mizell and Wilson take that leap next year.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Me and you had actually talked about their tight end a few days ago, Arlis Boardingham. I think he is a very, very nice player there. Kind of a sleeper tight end, younger guy, can really go up and catch the ball. Runs pretty well. He's not Kyle Pitts, but he definitely has potential.
Yeah, Boardingham is one of these that almost has could have a little bit of like maybe say a Chig type comparison, where he's very athletic. He could be an interesting after the catch guy. They don't use the tight end too much in that scheme. Or at least they haven't historically. And so it'll be interesting to see again what kind of run he gets. But I agree. He's just a name to keep an eye on, that if all of a sudden I wouldn't be surprised if we just saw some big plays from him all of a sudden. And he popped out. Really interesting prospect.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you hit it on the money with his athleticism, though, where he might not need to line up at the tight end to get that playing time, right? Because he can be on the outside. He was a 3-star recruit, but he's definitely someone that has the potential to stand out the rest, because we don't know what to see with the wide receiver core, but sometimes when you have the tight ends that line up outside, that's the quarterback's favorite target. So you might be able to see a little bit more of him, depending on if he can make the name for himself in camp.
Sure. Before we go any further here, we do have a comment coming in. This one is from our boy Bob Miller. Who would be your top 5 Superflex Devy players from the SEC East? Now, I know we haven't dove into every team yet, but who are you guys looking at as far as your top 5 guys go?
Bowers is one.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at all these guys real quick. I think
I can go ahead and throw you a couple of them. Bowers, obviously. Etienne's another one. Nico Iamaleava, quarterback for Tennessee. Then you're looking at guys like Juice Wells, Nicholas Harbor,
Burden,
Barry Brown,
Burden.
Burden. Yeah. There's several guys in the SEC East who have tons of talent. Joe Milton's another one. Lenore Settles, quarterback for South Carolina. I'm a big fan of, like we were already talking about, Oscar Delp, Pierce Sperlin, those young tight ends for Georgia. Aiden Mizell and Eugene Wilson are a couple other guys. There is a ton of talent there in the SEC East, and it's all about kind of monitoring these guys and kind of looking into them, it's a little bit more. But my opinion, you got Bowers, you got Nico, you got Burden, Harbor's another one.
ETN.
Yeah. I would probably say that those are probably my top 5 guys. Harbor is very interesting to me just because his position ambiguity. Is he a wide receiver long term, or does he put on weight and become a tight end or even a defensive end? I know he doesn't want to put on a whole lot of weight just strictly because he wants to keep running track. So if he stays at wide receiver, he's a freaking monster.
Agreed.
All right, well, let's move on to our next team that I think is kind of silently loaded in a Devy aspect. That's Kentucky. Quarterback wise, Devin Leary. He was a pro prospect while he was at North Carolina State. Got hurt, transferred to Kentucky. I think he's still a pro prospect. The return of Liam Cohen helps. Of course, if you remember a couple years ago under Cohen, Will Levis was actually really good, and then Cohen left, and then all of a sudden Levis sucked. So he still parlayed that into being a top of the second round guy in the NFL draft. I think Leary is a better quarterback than what Levis is. He may not have the same type of tools Levis does, but I just think he has it more here than what Levis does.
Yeah, it's actually one of my notes where I have it for him is leadership and IQ. He looks like he has it in the head. He knows what he needs to do. He can spread the ball around well, and he has a nice zip to his passes. He can definitely throw the dart in there if he needs to, with accuracy though too. He knows when he needs to deliver on the money, and he has some good wide receivers there. I mean, when we were talking about top 5 Devy, you mentioned Barry and Brown, phenomenal wide receiver. Dane Key, I could throw him in the mix just because he's an athletic freak. So he has the weapons there. To make him look nice, or even to elevate their draft stock and make them look great. So I think Kentucky. It's unfortunate that they're in the SEC, right? Because they have talent there. But with the powerhouses you have in the SEC, I don't think we'll ever necessarily see them in that national championship caliber. So you won't talk about them as heavy. But there's some sleepers because they're producing some pro guys. We're seeing more and more of them come out.
Oh, yeah. Yep. We'll get into those wide receivers here in a minute. I want to touch on a couple of their running backs. So, Raymond Davis coming over from Vandy. I think he really showed a lot last year while at Vanderbilt. He's a good, solid runner, powerful. Coming over to Kentucky where they're going to utilize him the way that they utilized a Chris Rodriguez. I think that's going to kind of feature his strengths a little bit more than what happened when he was at Vandy. He's going to get a little bit more exposure there. I think he is a potential day 3 guy probably in the NFL draft. And then they got a freshman coming in, Jamarian Wilcox. Call me crazy. I think he's very much in the same mold as a Quinshad Junkins. I don't think he's going to burst on the scene quite the same way, but I think he's kind of in that same mold.
Noted.
Yeah. Again, call me crazy. I don't care if you do or not, whatever. But I kind of see him kind of in that same type of mold, same type of player.
It's very possible. I mean, you're bringing in the transfer, and now you're bringing in him. I mean, it's very possible it could be anyone's game. So I think it's just. They could be playing hot hand, when we have it this year at Kentucky, and it could be anyone's, and definitely 2 guys you want to keep on your radars. Devy's prospects, I'm not necessarily drafting them, but there's someone's I'm looking for in the draft and where they get that capital because, when you do your rookie drafts, one of them's going pro,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ray Davis could be a fourth round rookie pick next year in starting in rookie drafts. For Dynasty. Mm-hmm. I could see that easy. He could have a Chris Rodriguez type path and 6th, 7th round draft capital.
Well, it also depends on where he goes in the NFL. Like, I actually like Rodriguez's landing spot. I think he has a good opportunity there in Washington, just mainly because I don't think the other two running backs are very good. All right, wide receivers here. Here's where Kentucky is loaded. Tavion Robinson, Barian Brown, Dane Key, Shamar Porter, the freshman. All four of those guys, dynamic, fast. Dane Key has great length, can go up and catch the ball, strong hands. Really like what Kentucky has there in their wide receiver room. What are you guys thinking?
I love their wide receiver room. I mean, definitely one of the favorites. And that's where, with Leary too, it's going to be interesting. Is it the quarterback play or is it the talented wide receivers that makes the big jump to you off the screen? That's something where I really want to watch this year when I'm watching Kentucky, because I know these wide receivers are talented. So now let's see if there's an elevation because they have a possibly better quarterback in the backfield calling the plays and calling the shots. But they're all jumping off the screen to me. They're all guys that I would love to have a piece of. And we'll see who. It really wouldn't matter who necessarily the alpha would be because the one right behind him isn't going to be far behind them, in my opinion.
Sure.
Yeah, agreed. If anyone watching has not had the pleasure of watching Barian Brown tape, just go search some and find it and enjoy, because that kid is absolutely electric. And I agree. I don't think it matters. Dane Key is also excellent. And Tavion Robinson doesn't get talked about as much. He had a very big slot role. He's been quietly effective for 2 seasons. Cohen coming back was obviously responsible for Wan'Dale Robinson, and Tavion Robinson is probably most likely to step into that kind of role. So he's someone to watch out for a little bit. Barian Brown is the guy who's probably going in the top 3 to 4 rounds of the Devy draft, though, from what I've seen and where I would take him.
I actually saw one the other day where Barian Brown went at the end of the first.
Oh, wow.
So he's getting a lot of love.
That's the highest I've seen, but
yeah,
he's seen 3rd. I've seen Dane Key slip into 5th, not that much, not that often though. I haven't seen Leary slip in yet though, but I agree with all y'all. Leary's the guy to keep an eye on. He could have one of those, like one of those season pops. He was very good 2 seasons ago at NC State. Very good. 35 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He was very effective.
Yeah, another guy to keep an eye on for Kentucky. Tight end Kamari Anderson, young guy, athletic, can go make plays. I know Kentucky has kind of been on the search for a tight end to be able to utilize in that offense, and he may be the guy coming up. All right, moving on to our next team, Missouri. Again, here, not really a whole lot to talk about outside of maybe a couple wide receivers and tight end. We'll go ahead and touch here on their quarterback room, though. Brady Cook, Jake Garcia, who's transferring in from Miami, and Sam Horn, who has recently given up baseball in order to focus more on football. Anything from these quarterbacks you guys are seeing, or are they more of just a, eh?
I mean, I'm not necessarily targeting them. I think it might be Jake Garcia's job to go take. He seems to be improving year after year. I think if the pocket collapses around him, that's where it kind of makes me worry. He needs to be a little bit more efficient in getting the ball out of his hands, I feel like. But I definitely think he's the quarterback to target if you're having deep drafts. If you want someone from Missouri, he's probably the quarterback I'm looking at right now.
Right.
Yeah, Cook was named the starter. It wasn't a firm statement I saw, but I think I saw that they sort of pseudo-named him the starter. But I agree, from a Devy perspective, Garcia is the most interesting to me, because I admittedly don't know as much about Sam Horn. Brady Cook can be
it's somewhat effective in a very late round of it, like a CFF type of format, but I don't see an NFL future for these folks. I'm not sure about Horn, but Garcia overcooked for sure. Agreed with SC there.
Sure. Running back wise, Tavors Jones probably the only guy there that has any type of potential. I mean, was that who's the other guy there? They got Schrager, and Pete's still there, I think, also, but I don't think either one of those guys have much NFL potential. Tavors Jones could possibly have a little bit. Wide receiver is where we're going to really look at here. Luther Burden is the big time guy there. Very much a Deebo Samuel type of player. Same type of build, same type of skill set. They'll utilize him a lot of the same way. And then you got Theo Weiss Jr. coming in from Oklahoma, Joshua Manning, the freshman, and Marquise Johnson. I think Manning and Burden probably have Burden specifically, but then Manning right after him, I think probably has the most allure in a Devy realm. And then tight end Brett Norfleet. He's kind of intriguing to me also. I really want to see him on the field and producing a little bit though.
Yeah,
I agree.
Burden's a stud, probably in the making, and Love It leaving leaves that room a little bit up for grabs. Although Burden had a pretty effective freshman year overall, honestly, for freshman starting. C2C does that year zero marker. So I was checking it out. Burden hit every single year zero marker, and they break it down by receptions, rushes, like it's receptions, yards, receiving yards, rushes, rushing yards, and then return game. And he literally hit green checks across every single one, which speaks to your Deebo Samuel comment. Like, this guy just kind of does everything. He's kind of a beast with the ball in his hands. He's a top 325 overall receiver for me in that class, for sure. So he's super elite. Theo Weiss will be a little bit interesting to see, because he's a former 5-star, at least according to some recruiting services. Had a couple years at Oklahoma, didn't do nothing, but didn't pop. It'll be interesting to see if he shows anything. I like Manning like you do. He's a really interesting freshman. Got size, got real potential NFL future. Be interesting to see what he does. And there's some room for him to play early.
Yeah. Hey Noah, do you have something covering up your microphone at all? Because you're sounding a little muffled.
Yeah, my cat.
Okay, gotcha.
All over his sprawled all over my screen right now.
No wonder it was hard to hear you.
Thank you. He's right on. I was wondering that.
I actually have to head out here, guys, but I do want to say Luther Burden, looking at the wide receiver rooms in the SEC East, Luther Burden's your wide receiver one. I think he's the standout guy. He's going to be versatile, and if they utilize him right, you can see him. You mentioned top 25. I mean, you could see him climb these draft boards and just have a phenomenal year. It might not even be during the season, right? It might be the combine. He just comes out and everyone's like, wow, he's an athletic freak. So he's definitely someone to keep on your radars, and I could probably take him in the first round of Devy. In 12 teams, he's possibly someone where I'm not mad at if you go with him. And definitely, in the SEC East, he's the one guy that you want to have when it comes to the wide receiver room. I do appreciate talking to you guys. I do need to head out though. But until next time, y'all, I'll be watching the show from afar, and I look forward to talking to y'all again.
All right, SC. We'll holler at you later, buddy.
See you later.
All right, no, let's move on to South Carolina here. Push the wrong button.
South Carolina, interesting team.
Yeah, South Carolina's pretty interesting. Spencer Rattler and a guy we mentioned earlier, Lenore Settles at quarterback. Settles is the heir apparent to Rattler, I think, and he's got good size. Was he like 6'2", 215? Really solid guy, freshman coming in. I think Settles has a pretty high ceiling. at that quarterback position.
Yeah, Sellers is interesting. I've seen him going higher and higher in C2C and Devy mocks. He's rising up there pretty fast. What are your thoughts on Rattler?
Good Spencer Rattler is really good. Bad Spencer Rattler is not an NFL quarterback.
Yep.
So it totally depends on if he's turned a corner. I mean, you really saw it towards the end of the year last year, the Tennessee, Clemson, and Notre Dame games where he turned it on and lit those three teams up. But before then, he was really, really bad, and it was like, why is South Carolina sticking with this guy?
Yep. Yeah, he's one of the most controversial players because I see him going all over boards in terms of how people view him, which is he's got the Jekyll Hyde thing. He obviously was an elite recruit, has that in him. Personally, I'm not taking a wager that if he gets drafted, that he goes any higher than day 3.
Yeah.
Even with it would take a lot this season for him to get anywhere close to approaching real NFL relevance.
Yeah, I think high end with Rattler is he may be a kind of back end of the 3rd round of the NFL draft, but I think that's kind of his ceiling.
Yeah, I would agree.
Running backs, they got a really good freshman running back coming in, Dontavius Braswell. He has quite a bit of juice to him, and I'm pretty interested to see how he steps in there at South Carolina. I don't know how much run he's going to get as a freshman. Obviously, South Carolina lost Marshawn Lloyd to South Carolina or USC to your SC there. Again, I don't believe Marshawn Lloyd was all that good to begin with either. No offense to any Trojan fans out there, but
I'm interested to see what he does at SC. And my jury's out. I'm not sure how good he is yet, but I do see
injuries with him.
He had a lot of injuries. I do see him rising up Devy boards. He had a sweet highlight we'll do that in the Pac-12. He had a sweet highlight in the spring game that got a lot of people turned on to him. Because that's kind of what happens in the spring. South Carolina's running back room is really interesting right now. Like they've got Braswell didn't enroll early in the spring, I believe, right. And then they've been running. They got a transfer, Mario Anderson, from a local D2 college, who's set like literally every record in all of Division II history and rushing kind of thing. So he could get some run. Does he have NFL potential? Probably not. And they've been even running some wide receivers at running back in the spring a little bit, apparently. So yeah, that is wide open for Braswell. It's also a place potentially that a transfer running back could come in. So just to keep an eye out, if somebody does walk in there, there's a lot of opportunity in that room.
Sure. Wide receivers. I mentioned Dontavius Braswell having some juice. How about Juice Wells? It's in his nickname right there. Antoine Juice Wells Jr. He all SEC performer last year. He wasn't getting a whole lot of Devy buzz going into last season, but then coming out of last season, he was getting a little bit more. He was a transfer coming in. I can't quite remember where he transferred in from. Was it James Madison, maybe?
Yep.
And then freshman Nicholas Harbor, we mentioned him earlier. Does he stick at wide receiver? Does he gain weight and move to tight end, or even move to the defensive side of the ball? A lot of people thought his best potential was at defensive end, but like I said, he doesn't want to have to put on weight because he wants to continue running track.
Yeah, and he seems to want to play offense. And as you said, it was being all the tight end talk was coming up, and then he's stuck at wide receiver, which is going to be interesting to see. He definitely has the speed. He has the long speed to play wide receiver just based on his literal numbers. I mean, his 100-yard dash is something absolutely insane, and he just runs people off the field and is enormous. So he's an interesting one to see, and how his game refines. I could see him lighting it up, to be honest, if he focuses. Juice Wells is a really interesting name to me. Like, I don't know if I'm taking him in the top 5 rounds of a draft, but I might slip him into the top 5. He was incredibly productive last year. He's got a little bit of that Debo style to his game also, a little bit physical, very versatile, can line up all over the field, can beat you underneath, and was just incredibly effective last year. And again, it's not like he had a consistently excellent quarterback throwing him the ball, and he put up serious numbers last year. So I'm interested. I'm keeping an eye on him as somebody that could rise some boards. And if he puts up 2 years in a row of great numbers in this conference, I could see him getting late day 2 capital. Sure. Early day 3 capital.
Yeah, I could definitely see late day 2 capital for him. Tight end wise, they brought in a couple of transfers. Trey Knox out of Arkansas and Joshua Simon out of Western Kentucky. I think Trey Knox probably has the biggest NFL potential there of those tight ends. But I think Simon can run a little bit. If you go back and watch some of his highlights last year, he didn't really get a whole lot of targets, mainly just because they were slinging it all around to Malachi Corley and a couple of those other wide receivers there. Austin Reed is a tremendous quarterback there at Western Kentucky. But I think Simon has a little bit of ability, in order to be able to play in the SEC too.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Knox is really interesting. He's a converted wide receiver.
Yep.
So he's got some juice. He was featured pretty heavily in their spring game, along with Juice Wells. Caught a number of balls. They seem to be targeting him. He is somebody I would keep an eye on that I could see getting some draft stock. NFL loves those converted wide receiver tight end types, and he fits that mold for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right, on to the squad of the SEC East. My Vols. We're gonna start off in the quarterback room. Joe Milton, 23 years old, super senior, COVID senior, whatever you want to say. Biggest arm in the country, Bazooka Joe. He is the guy that nobody's talking about right now, but I think everybody will be talking about here come the combine next year. And then you got incoming 5-star freshman Nico Iamaleava. What do you think of these two guys?
I love them. I also have to, when you invited me on this show, I did a little, I had to do a little inside intel. So I want to give a little shout out to my boy Tate at Jamison Tate, who's in one of our leagues together and is a Tennessee fan. So I called him up just to get I just wanted a little bit of inside intel on Tennessee, especially because you're a Tennessee guy. I wanted to come a little prepped. So I'm excited to see Joe Milton this year. First of all, let's start with Joe. I'm excited to see Joe this year. What I'm most interested in is, which I think everybody is the accuracy. That has been the big knock on him and the big challenge for him. Milton, when he played last year, played extraordinarily well. And then kind of he got hurt and Hooker got in and just ran with it. But Milton has the potential. I'm interested to see if he can get that accuracy together. It sounds like he's been working on it and he can. He is surrounded by an arsenal. And so he's the type of guy that could rise up draft boards and also could be, he could get a Heisman invite. It's not out of the question at all. Because Tennessee's that good and the surrounding cast is that good, and his arm talent is, I saw a video of him you probably saw this. There's a video of him going around where he basically stood flat-footed on the 20-yard line and threw it literally on a rope to the opposite goal line. And It's just, his arm strength is insane. Yeah. So I'm interested to see what he can do. Nico's pretty special. He's young, but he seems to like this is Joe's job right now. I think that's the vibe. Nico knows it. Everybody knows it. He knows he's sitting for the year. It's not a Dante Moore situation where he wants to get in there real fast. Nico's got something really special about him. Just his vibe, the way that he handles himself in the pocket. He's elusive in the pocket. He's got a really good arm. He can sling it everywhere. Just really interested to see. He is very thin. So it'll be interesting to see him if he gets a little bigger, but he's also got that body type where he gives off like a weird Kevin Durant type of vibe. Like you almost don't want to I don't want him to get too big, but he does need to get a little bit bigger probably because he is he is definitely on the thin side, but he's young. So I think your future at Tennessee with that quarterback room is set up extraordinarily well. I think Joe Milton's worth the consideration in a 5-round Devy draft to me at this point. He wasn't in the beginning. I didn't know enough, and that team is good enough.
Well, 2 years ago, whenever he transferred in, like you said, he had accuracy issues with overthrowing deep balls. He didn't know how to tame his arm. Got hurt, and then Hendon Hooker took over, and then last year, he came in some mop up duty. Really showed he was able to tame that arm, wasn't overthrowing deep balls, and then took over for Hooker at the end of the year when Hooker tore his ACL. And that Clemson game in the Orange Bowl, he was dominant.
Yeah.
You go into a game against that Clemson defense, and you do what you did to them, you're a legitimate quarterback.
Yeah.
6'5", 240 pounds. He may have slimmed down a little bit. I think he's more in the 230s now, just because he wants to have a little bit more speed and elusiveness to him. He's a big physical runner. He's not going to run away from a whole lot of people. He has enough speed, but he is a guy who's just going to run you over. And then his arm is the strongest arm I think I may have ever seen in my life. He threw an orange over 100 yards and splattered up against the back of the practice field wall. Just insane. Nico, just watching him, and I've actually heard him described this way as Bryce Young, but 6'6".
Yeah, there you go.
Elusive, kind of just a wizard back there, can get away from you, can make all the throws. Like you said, he's a little bit on the skinny side, came in right around 200 pounds. I think he's up to 215 now.
Yeah.
The coaching staff wants him up around 220 by the time kickoff rolls around. I don't think that's going to be much of an issue. So, if you're looking at 6'6", 220, and a guy who can move around and scramble and can make all the throws, then you're looking at a potential 1-1 NFL draft pick.
Yeah, Nico's a potential 1-1 guy. That's why as a 26 quarterback, he's going in as early as the mid to late second, and pretty solid. Like, he doesn't really make it out of the third of most Devy drafts that I see. It's always interesting drafting quarterbacks in Devy because there's so much unknown. But like you said, Nico's got 101 potential. He's amazing. And yeah, Joe Milton's arm gets the like Bo Jackson story treatment. And I'm excited to see that guy on the field for a full season with this offense. It's going to be pretty wild. What Heupel's done to that team is one of the great coaching jobs that I've seen in a while.
Oh yeah, because UT was dead.
Like, it was dead. Yeah.
Jeremy Pruitt, when Jeremy Pruitt was fired, UT was a dead program. Nobody wanted any part of it.
Yep.
And now they may be the hottest program in the country.
Literally. Yeah, it's really wild.
All right, moving on from the quarterback room, I could drool over these guys all night long. But let's go into the running backs. we're looking at guys like, you got Jalen Wright and Jabari Small. They're the two veterans of the running back room. I think Jalen Wright probably has the most NFL potential of those two, just size and explosiveness. Jabari Small tends to get hurt quite a bit. And then the younger guys, Dylan Sampson has a lot of speed to him. And Cameron Seldon, the incoming freshman, it's going to be his first year focusing primarily at running back. He played wide receiver a lot in high school, but if you watch the spring game, he has it.
Oh yeah, he's a 6'2", 225 converted receiver. In RC2C league, I snagged him in like the 17th round. And now he goes. That was back in like February. Now I see him. He goes as early as the 5th round of Devy drafts now. After that spring game,
I see him go in C2C leagues as early as 3rd and 4th round now.
Wow. Yeah, he's just skyrocketed because he's got really elite potential and versatility. Like you said, he was a wide receiver. He's labeled an athlete by all the recruiting services. So if anybody's looking up his rankings for recruiting, he's labeled as an athlete. Mm-hmm. But man, he is electric, incredibly fast. 100-yard dash times are off the charts. Big, can run guys over, can catch the ball. He's going to be interesting to see. I'm interested in your running back room. I think you literally hit it on the head. I mean, first of all, Heupel runs a bit of a committee based on at least what he's done in the past. You had kind of those 3 guys getting a distribution of shares with Wright and Small getting most of the carries, Sampson getting some. I was looking up rushing numbers, and you kind of hit it on the head with your analysis. Dylan Sampson was by leaps and bounds your most efficient runner last year. His rushing yards over expected were triple what Jalen Wright's were, and Jalen Wright's were triple what Jabari Small's was.
Yeah. Well,
crazy.
Here's the difference in Wright and Sampson. Wright's running with the first team, Sampson running against second, third team defenses. Sure. Not that Sampson is not a good running back. If Sampson could prove to do it against first team defenses, then yeah, you have something.
Sure. He's small, fast. Like you said, he's small, fast, interesting. I brought up the efficiency largely because I think that's also just impacted by the speed. He has he ends up with a lot of big plays, gets a lot of open run. Do you think Jalen Wright has NFL potential?
I think he has the most NFL potential of those 3.
Yeah.
Just because he has more of the size. I would like to see him not fumble quite as much. But I think he has decent NFL potential. Probably a day 3 guy at best. Probably like a 5th, 6th round type of running back. But he does have potential there.
All right. Cool.
Wide receiver, their wide receiver room just ridiculous too. Brew McCoy, Dante Thornton, Squirrel White. Those are going to be your main 3 this year. Ramel Keaton is also going to get a lot of play. But Brew McCoy, he was a 5-star athlete. You know a lot about him. Former USC guy. Got into a little bit of trouble. Transferred. He's actually transferred a couple different times. He transferred after his freshman year to go to Texas, and then during that same offseason transferred back to USC, right. and then ended up transferring to Tennessee. He's got very good size. He can run. He can catch. I think he has a pretty high ceiling. Dante Thornton, I think, has the highest ceiling of any UT receiver right now. Think Jalen Hyatt last year in that same type of role, but again, he's 6'5".
Yeah,
fast,
and he's 5'2", and he's fast. He's going to be super interesting to see. What is your read on Squirrel?
Squirrel is small.
He's very small. Is he 170 yet?
He may be now.
Okay.
But he was coming in. He was like 157 or something like that. It's like, I mean, he got quite a bit of play last year, so obviously he's not too small.
Right.
But as far as NFL potential, I want to see him get up to that 180 without losing any type of explosiveness. He's the fastest guy on any field, but I want to see him be able to get up to about 180, 185 without losing too much speed. The 5'10", 5'11" doesn't scare me from a wide receiver standpoint. It's about can he keep his speed while also putting on a little bit of weight to be able to protect himself.
Yep. Yeah, because he's he can't at if he's under 170, it's not going to work, at least next level wise. I don't think any of that will matter this year. If I was taking a CFF guy, I would draft Squirrel White probably first of your. Yeah. He also has that. I mean, talked about Milton in the Clemson game. Squirrel White was also unbelievable in that game with Milton. His speed plus Milton's arm strength equals money. And like you said, I think Dante coming over from Oregon in that offense is going to be really fun to see, to have another field stretcher, and then Brew being the big. Brew's big. Brew's 6'4" and 225, 230, something like that, right? So he's going to be big underneath. Definitely be kind of a go-to guy underneath for Milton. And I don't know if Bruce still has NFL potential. Maybe he sneaks in there a little bit. I do see Squirrel White sneaking into Devy drafts.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that. Like, that's why I was interested in your perspective of like, is he worth a dart in like a 5th round of a Devy draft or the 6th round of a Devy draft? Right. Like, just because he's electric enough. Right.
Other wide receivers, we mentioned Keaton. He has good rapport with Joe Milton. Not sold on his NFL potential. He may have a little bit more of an undrafted free agent type of guy. But then you're looking at the younger guys. Caleb Webb, outstanding. If you watch the spring game, he made a couple catches that were just really incredible. Nathan Leacock, big time freshman wide receiver coming in. He really exploded onto the scene as a recruit last year. Committed to UT. He had a pretty decent. He had a really good spring. Chaz Nimrod also had a really good spring. Tennessee coaches are really high on him as well. What do you see out of any of those guys?
I mean, I love Leacock. I think he's easily. I mean, right now I would put him in my top 10 for 26 for the 26 receiver class. He's got size, he's got speed, and I think he's going to be able to refine his routes. And he was productive in high school. Like he was very productive in high school. He caught a lot of balls and put up a lot of yards. Not all of these receivers always are, but he was. So I think he's going to be a really nice fit. And I agree about Caleb Webb also. I think he's really, I think between the three of them, I would probably rank them in that order if I had to. I'd probably go Leacock, Webb, and Nimrod. But like you said, Webb is showing out, so that could change in the next year. And y'all are turning into Georgia Light, man, with this receiver. Like, it is just, you've got electric receivers for days. It's wild.
Yeah, they just keep bringing in more and more of them too. Like this next recruiting class, that they're in on a couple big time 5-star wide receivers that if they end up signing, they're going to be super special here too.
Totally.
Tight end room, McAllen Castles transferred in from UC Davis, and then you got Ethan Davis, the incoming freshman. He just broke his collarbone in the spring. He's also coming off of a shoulder injury from high school, but he has big time talent also. And I think Ethan Davis is going to be a big time tight end prospect whenever he's eligible.
Yeah, I agree on Ethan Davis. And it's a bummer. it's a bummer that he broke he had that injury early on, especially having enrolled early, and he was showing out in the spring game before he went down too, because he's a really interesting one to keep an eye on, and keep your ears open for as it goes down the road for future year kind of drafts. He could be really interesting. Castles was productive at Davis. I would be interested to see how Heupel uses the tight end. I'll be interested to see how he uses a guy like Davis, because he hasn't really had that per se. So that'll be really interesting. Yep. Castles doesn't seem to have the same level of athleticism, although he was productive and caught balls. So I think he will do a little bit of that. I don't think he has NFL potential. But
he is getting some draft buzz.
Is he?
Yeah, he is getting some. He'll probably be more of a back end of the draft, undrafted free agent type of guy, but I do think he'll get invites into camp, kind of like what Noah Fant did this past season.
Yeah, I mean, watch him turn into Dalton Kincaid, and I'll just be eating this right now.
I would love that.
Yeah. Although I don't know if there's enough targets with your wide receiver. It's like,
that's true.
That wide receiver room is just unbelievable.
That's true.
Although, again, if I'm going just straight on the Devy level for this team, it's like the three guys are honestly your two quarterbacks, and Selden are the top three Devy guys, and then kind of sprinkle the wide receivers in. Well, I agree. Would you go? So if you were doing a Devy draft, would you take Thornton over Squirrel White?